Sorry for the little bit of delay, but as soon as they shut the airport down for the air show, we're not able to get across directly, so we have to go around, and that takes about 100 times longer than when we're shooting across the road. But welcome to our first ever seminar or forum here in our building for the jet specifically. We usually do the forums over on the other side of the airport, but we thought it'd be a much better setting to bring you over here and we can look at the hardware and the jets and answer a lot of questions. We're going to have some fun discussions, I think, and please feel free to raise your hand and ask questions. So we're going to get to not only why the SubSonex exists, but how you might train to fly it. Some of the things that we're going to do in the future as far as what we're looking for as a further development of the airplane. And we're going to listen to somebody that went through the training program personally. So myself and Bob Carlton, of course, Pete Zancanito, famous air racer, and of course Paul Dye, who is, by the way, editor of Kit Planes magazine. Soon to be fun. No. Yeah. So just get the ball rolling a little bit and tell you a little bit about Sonex. We're celebrating our 20th year, if you haven't seen that. I've been building kit airplanes since 1970 and producing kits and parts for other airplanes. So this kind of business is nothing new, but the form of the airplane is. And we've developed a full line of airplanes from the original Sonex, which you see right over here, is the very first one that was built, along with its sister, one of 5 prototypes that were hand-built here in our other building that was the office. These airplanes were built to meet the Italian microlight category, which was an interesting thing. Back 20 years ago, if you lived in Italy, you could buy an airplane ready to fly, as long as it had a gross weight of 1,100 pounds installed at under 40 miles an hour. So we were commissioned to design that airplane, and we did, and we delivered the first prototype to satisfy a contract to Italy. Now, it had a couple of caveats, and the funniest one is that you could, if it was 1,100 pounds, 40 miles stall speed, go fly out without a license, but you can only go to a maximum altitude of 500 feet. And on Sunday, you could go to 1,000 feet. But it's like, wow, it's a lot of parameters. But I actually flew the Sonex tri-gear that we delivered to our customer out of an 800-foot unimproved strip. It was pretty interesting, to say the least. Very little, no margin. But that airplane, being designed the way it was, part of our contract was to produce a set of plans that covered everything in the airplane, the construction of the airplane, from not only the skins and the form parts, but the wafting for the cowling and canopy, so that it could be productionized and could be built by unskilled labor, so that this company could put the airplanes together and ready to fly and sold them. Well, Pete Buck, my partner, who was a design partner on this airplane, who is now at Lockheed in the Skunk Works. He is a fellow at Lockheed, meaning he's in the upper 1% to 2% of all the engineers at Lockheed Martin. So he's a smart guy. Started working for me when he was 16 years old, and went to school and developed a lot of really cool stuff. His first project there was being a floor manager on a project called Have Blue, which ultimately ended up as the 117. And it's just a great guy, and we developed the airplane, and we said, you know, we've done all this work for this contract, and on the U.S. side, this would be a great kit airplane, or an airplane that guys can build from scratch. So we started selling plans, formed SubSonex Aircraft officially, and the airplane gained a lot of popularity. The neat thing about the development in the last 20 years, it's just like back in the 70s when we were producing airplanes, it was a major deal when in the early 80s computers came out. And then we found really nice uses for that, like CNC machining, etc. Well, not too long ago, actually, about 15 years ago, 16 years ago, laser cutting became very popular. And all of our parts now that were all defined on the plans could be cut out with a laser instead of hand building an airplane like these, which was all laid out with a pen and pre-drilled, etc. parts. So that was a quantum leap in the ability to build the kits, and they became obviously popular enough that we came here. Well, Pete and I have this relationship where we're always scratching our head about what's next. Well, we built the Sonex, and we built then the YX, which has a Y tail, is the airplane that we really wanted to build. Pete had contracted diabetes, and so he had a glider rating, so he wanted to build a motor glider, and that's how the Xenos came up, using the same cockpit situation that we have, or configuration that we have on the Sonex to build a motor glider with a longer fuselage and longer wings, and we completed that. All of it, kind of, the design was an evolution of the racing airplanes that we did back in the 70s and 80s. So we knew how to build gliders, and the Xenos has worked out to be a really interesting airplane. Incidentally, it's the genesis now for our RPVs. And next month, if you walk in here, you'd see our RPVs being built, which is a 44-foot wingspan airplane that can be flown autonomously. So we're going forward with a lot of interesting things, and the what's next kind of thing was we always thought, well, let's build an electric airplane, and that was a thought that we had back again in the 80s when we were flying a little airplane called Ammonia, and I thought, well, let's do a project called Flash Flight, and like a flashlight, we'll get a big crate of Burgess batteries or ever-ready batteries and stick them in the airplane and fly it. Well, of course, that was stupid, but it was certainly an idea that it could come about. So when we had the time and resources, we actually took a YX, and we own all of the technology for not only the electric motor, but the controllers and the battery management system and everything that made it fly. And about 6-7 years ago, I flew the first prototype electric motor here, and soon I lose interest. So I want to move on to the next thing. So what's next? Well, remember that thing called the BD-5 jet back in the 70s that came out and was so outrageously expensive, actually. The motors back then, the jet engines that they had were well over $150,000 in 1976 dollars. So that was not an affordable thing, but we went about looking at some little jet engines that were available. We had been keeping track of model airplane engines and others that were being developed, and we found on Christmas Eve, I found an engine that was made in England. I said, oh, this would be great, and sent off some money, and we designed a little airplane around, which is the prototype of the Sonex jet that you may have seen in our office, and if you haven't gotten over there to see the original prototype, it's now retired and it's sitting in that office. But the point is that jet engine never ran because it didn't have a controller. When we started building controllers, because we can build controllers for electric motors
and we know kind of the parameters. But then this guy came by, and we were watching his Super Salto fly here in Oshkosh, and he came over and introduced himself. And he kind of thought that the original prototype was just one of our airplanes with a jet engine stuck on it, but it's really a completely different airplane, much smaller. Some people have trouble with perception. But nevertheless,
I thought you were taller too.
I always think I am. But nevertheless, we started working with PBS and obtained an engine which made a lot of sense. The original prototype airplane was pretty funny. We thought, oh, we'll build it simple like a glider. We'll just put a single wheel under it. And some wingtip wheels, which led to, as I was starting to test this airplane, led to many excursions around the airport. I mean, not on the runway. We found that, of course, is when we powered up, that the engine would just lift the tail off the ground. It was a tail dragger, it had a tail wheel. But then I had absolutely no steering, and I was at the mercy of the shutdown period. It was pretty interesting, and we immediately knew that, hey, this thing has to have tri-gear. So we built the tri-gear into the airframe, and we thought it was really great. And Bob came out and did the first flights on that airplane, and we learned a lot about what the little microjet can do, even though it had a fixed main gear and a fixed nose wheel initially, and then we made a retractable nose gear. And that cleaned up the airplane a little bit. We knew what kind of potential was going to come out of that airplane. We demonstrated here at Oshkosh, and it was really fun. Well, it became about really because I always wanted to have a jet, and I knew that it was unobtainable in any other way. So at about 68, 69 years old, I was obviously able to realize the dream, and with Bob's help in developing the airplane, we think we have a really fun plane. So that developed as SubSonex developed with its quick build program. We decided that we would build the airplanes as quick builds because a lot of customers want that. We produce an airplane that meets the 51% rule, where most of the airframes built, as you can see from what's going on in the other room, there's actually, you don't see it, but there's 6 of those airplanes going together to meet the present orders. And what gets done is the fuselage is finished, the canopy is fitted, the wings are done and fitted to the fuselage, and what's left to build are the tail surfaces and the control surfaces, as well as install things like the retractable gear mechanism and avionics, etc. So we think that it's a very advanced airplane, and it really takes advantage of all the things that we've developed in the SubSonex line. Things like a cross-linked polyethylene tank that is seamless, it's rotationally molded, a very safe fuel cell because it's sitting right behind you, and it's placed in the airplane right on the center of gravity. So we don't see a lot of pitch changes once we're flying the airplane from a full load of fuel to not. So that's one thing that we're really proud of, is we've developed in these airplanes and incorporated. So that's basically the story of how SubSonex came about. And JSX-2 now is a really well-defined aircraft. There are a lot of little details about it that we can talk, but I don't want to take up any more time. And I want to introduce Bob, and he's going to talk about the transition. He talks about everything. He's a rocket scientist, by the way. And now he's flying a little pocket rocket. So when we get the afterburner installed, it's going to be
yes, somebody say,
I guess it's just the pyro on the wings, right? So Bob, you want to take over? Are there any questions for me about anything that I've blabbed so far? Well, you're all asleep.
It is pretty warm in here. Try to stand up, stretch a little bit. I'll get this, get a PowerPoint on it. I'll screen it. I'm thinking that's not good.
Lots of hot air, Mark.
It's not good.
Lots of hot air.
It wasn't there a picture of it. It was that picture up there a second ago, I think.
What do we got, Mark? It's a Mac. I have no idea. There it goes. Okay, we got it.
Did I say he's a rocket scientist?
Rocket scientists don't need Macs.
Is our IT person?
Yeah, he's.
You can be the rocket scientist, I'm the rocket engineer.
Yeah, that's right.
There's another rocket scientist. I still hear the other window. So I heard a good joke the other day. So my mind is like a web browser. There's 19 windows in here open. 4 of them are probably frozen, and I can't figure out where the sound is coming from. Anyway, I'll get started and bring this up. But first of all, I apologize a little bit. I intended to have a better presentation, but I thought I was going to have all day today to sort of get that done. And then we find out 11 o'clock last night that last night's night show is actually going to happen tonight. So everybody come out and check out the night show. As you can see, we've already got the pyro on the jet ready to go. And so I'm glad they did that because it's 8 o'clock, yeah. And pretty much the same show. The B1 won't be here. I think Matt Johnson had to be up someplace else, so he won't be here. But pretty much the same show that we had planned for the night. So anyway, so I ended up having to go to a briefing today. And then I spent the hour before this meeting talking to one of the high-level FAA guys about some of the regulations that are ridiculously oppressive to some of the stuff we're trying to do here. So I think we're making some progress with the FAA. Did we get it going? Okay, so this one?
That's the first one.
Not that button.
Yeah. Okay, so this is just a little bit, I've been flying since 1979. I taught myself to fly in that $50 flight kite hang glider over there. I've done things like drop a hang glider from a balloon. I've flown a hang glider over 100 miles, and I fly airplanes, helicopters, and gliders. This presentation is actually about an hour-long presentation that covers a whole lot of the stuff that I've done in the last 10 or 12 years that I've just trimmed down to more of the sonic stuff. So there's a few of the projects I worked on when I worked at the National Laboratory. That's me in my younger days. This whole thing started for me because flying a sailplane at air shows, every place I went I had to have a tow pilot. And sometimes it's hard to get a tow pilot. And so that's what prompted the first idea was, here's my Salto glider with a mock-up of a 100-pound thrust engine. This was in 2001. We were actually supposed to do the deal on September 2nd, 2001. And then, of course, we all remember what happened the day before that. And I called the company and they said, no, we don't want to do anything airplane right now. They were basically scared. So that went away. But a little while later, I came up with this idea. This used a pair of model airplane jets. It actually flew pretty well. I flew air shows with that for about 6 years. There's a picture of it along with my other twins. Oh, no, that one's not mine. And this worked pretty well, but these small engines had a few issues. They used propane for starting. They didn't really have a starter. You had to start them with compressed air. They used the fuel and oil mix, and you'll see this a lot, even in some of the bigger engines now. They use a fuel oil mix instead of a full recirculating oil system, which our engine actually does have a full recirculating oil system. They also use glow plugs instead of a spark plug, and glow plugs were pretty unreliable, and the whole system just wasn't integrated very well. It was a model airplane engine. You got the engine, and then you had to take hose clamps to mount it, and you had to mount all the pumps and wires and hoses every place else. And so you ended up with this kind of messy system. There wasn't a good way to integrate it all.
So then I discovered the PBS TJ100 engine, and this was actually the game changer that caused this whole thing to gel and actually start to take off. This engine weighed 40 pounds, at the time put out 225 pounds of thrust, now 247, and actually it's a shade more than that. They keep improving it just slightly as it goes along. The thing that's great about this, first of all, the company, PBS, built things like the APUs for Russian helicopters and jets. When the Russian economy tanked about 15 years ago, that market pretty much went away. The Russians couldn't afford anything. And so they took the hot section of that APU, and that was the basis for starting the development of this engine. This engine wasn't actually built for something. People ask, what did that engine come off of? Well, it didn't really. They just knew that a market would develop in UAVs, light manned aircraft, and they thought that if they had this engine, that a market would develop around it. And it's taken a little longer than any of us thought. Took a little while to get traction, but it's starting to go now. They've built over 700 of these engines, and it does have a full recirculating oil system. The starter is actually built into the compressor. It's a brushless motor starter generator, recirculating oil, and a real spark plug. Paydeck, full digital control. So the first thing I did was put this on my Salto. It was a great aircraft for this for a number of reasons. It's high speed, lightweight, fully aerobatic, so I could go do air shows. It had a nice open structure above the spar, so it was easy to mount the engine too. I had a V-tail, so I could shoot the exhaust down through the tail, and I happen to own one. That helps a lot. And here's just some of the performance specs on that. So you guys, a lot of you have probably seen me fly this at air shows either here or someplace else around the country, but it's quite the little rocket. It's actually lighter than this one and less drag. It won't go as fast, but it's a pretty fun little aircraft. This is just a picture of the PBS factory, or one of their factories. It's actually a large group of companies, but this is the one where they build the engine. So one of the things that people worry about when they spend this much money on an engine is that company going to be around? This company has been around. They've been building turbine machinery for years, and there's about 1,200 people work at this part of the factory. So it's a well-established company and a large company.
Bob, you got a question?
Or take questions in the middle of this?
Sure. Yeah.
Where is this? Is this a Russian company?
No, they're in the Czech Republic. Velká Bytoč. It's near Brno, right up near the Czech-Slovakian border. By the way, just Czechoslovakia does not exist anymore. Hasn't for about 15 or 20 years. And the other thing, they were part of the Soviet bloc at one time. But when the wall came down, they were the first ones to put their hands out to the west and say, "Get us out of here." And two of their representatives have been here for the last couple of days. And just to hear them talk about, what it was like to be under that communist regime and now to be out and be free. They're more American than we are, I think. Very, very interesting, their culture. So anyway, so January 2008 is when we made the deal on the engine. Here's just a couple of pictures of the Salto going together. The engine arrived in May. Here we are in June doing some heat testing on the tail. Just general things about putting it together. This is 6 weeks before the first flight. Here we are heat testing on the aircraft. I'm just running through these really quick. And then July 13th, ready to fly. So it didn't take very long to put this whole thing together. And there's the first flight, August 2nd. I was a little younger then. This is kind of an old slide. We've done well over 100 air shows in it now. It's been a really, really reliable aircraft and just a lot of fun to fly.
Right, you put the smoke canisters on backwards.
That little tail slide. Just the other thing people ask is, is the engine finicky about intake? Because some of the bigger turbofan engines very finicky about intake here, and this one tail slides and uncoordinated flight, not a problem. So recognizing that was a good airplane to go out and fly air shows, but really wanted something that sort of showed that this was not just an airship trick, but something that could be useful. So the next one we built was the bonus jet. This is based on the TST-14, also a Czech design, totally by coincidence, only about 30 miles from the engine factory. There's a little bit of information about it. It's a 17-meter span, fairly lightweight for a two-seat glider. Empty weight's only 770 pounds, about a 40-to-1 glide ratio. B&E of only 110 knots, so it's not really fast, but it's a good aircraft. There's a quick, this is a shot of when I actually saw the aircraft the first time at Aero Friedrichshafen, which is sort of the European Oshkosh. It's only about 5% the size of this show, but it's big by European standards. There's just some early drawings of it. Some of the CAD models. That engine is retractable, by the way. There's a shot of them load testing the wings. There's the first time it came home with its true owner, who was sitting back there in the back in the front seat. Actually, if you notice that was, what was the date on it? January 8th or something. January 21st, the engine is installed and the retract mechanism is working. And just a few days later, we had it at the SSA convention, able to retract the engine and spin it. Didn't have all the fuel system hooked up, but just to give you an idea how simple it is to install this engine. Here it is on the test stand. This is actually the engine mount out of the Salto. Again, this thing is so simple. In about 30 minutes, I can pull the entire system out, have it on a test stand, and actually have it running. Because everything is so modular and it's only about 6 volts. So here we are doing some testing on the aircraft. There's a shot working late at night. This is about 2 days before the first flight. We're installing the fuel bags on the wings. And first flight in 2010. The reason I'm mentioning the bonus will come up a little later. That's actually the aircraft we're using for training in the SubSonex. And there it is. It's actually, this is an older slide too. It's got a lot more flights than that now, but basically that thing is working great. We haven't had any issues with it. And we built 4 jet sailplanes for one customer based on this design on the retract mechanism. So some of the advantages of the jet, it's just extremely simple. You can see just the flight instruments at the top, engine display at the bottom, and then you can see, I think this will, yeah, there's really only 2 switches that run the engine. One takes it up, down, one starts it, stops it, and there's a throttle over on the left. So a lot of the advantages of the jet, it's low drag with the engine extended, and this also holds true in the SubSonex. It's got a great glide ratio, about 17 to 1, just because you don't have a whole lot of engine intake propellers and things creating drag. Low vibration, another huge advantage that sometimes gets overlooked. Without vibration, you don't have the engine shaking itself apart. You don't have it shaking the airplane apart. So we don't have things like cracked sheet metal and chafed wires and that sort of thing. Don't happen as much. Some of the other things here only apply to the gliders, but it's also a lot fewer parts, so it tends to be more reliable. The lower fire danger, a lot of people don't know this too, but jet fuel is actually very much like diesel. You can put matches out it. It's very hard to light. So right after we got the plane flying, I figured out that it'd be a good idea to be able to train other people, let other people fly it and experience this. And so we set up a letter of deviation authority with the FAA. Because it's experimental, you normally can't charge for training. But under a letter of deviation authority, they recognize there may not be a certified aircraft that would be appropriate for doing this training. And so they have a program set up where we can actually do training in it. And there's our instructor, Bill. And I think that's Pablo Haber sitting in the seat, who's our examiner. So that's the aircraft we use for they call it comparable aircraft training. So before you can fly a jet, because everybody knows jets are big and heavy and scary, well, this one's not, but the FAA hasn't figured that out yet. But because it's a jet, you do have to have an authorization, which is the equivalent of a type rating. But since it's experimental, there's no type, so you can't have a type rating. So they just call it an experimental aircraft authorization. Sometimes you hear it called LOA, letter of authorization. That's an old term, but sometimes you hear it called that. So what we do to get that is you come out and you hop in the bonus with our instructor and you learn about the engine, how to operate the engine, and also sort of energy management. Because the one thing that is slightly different with the jet is the way it exchanges energy. With an airplane, if you push the throttle forward, it goes fast, pretty quick. You pull the throttle back, the propeller becomes a brake and it slows you down pretty quick. With the jet, you don't get that rapid acceleration and you don't get the rapid deceleration. So you have to think just a little bit more in advance about your energy situation and not just rely on the fact that when you pull the throttle back, it's going to slow down. So those are the things that we teach. It also puts you out in front of the aircraft because some people have never found something where you sit all the way out front like that. And great visibility, and your butt's only that far off the ground when you land. So most of our airplane pilots tend to flare the thing a little bit high. So
I think we might switch you here.
Okay.
This is, just don't hold it too close to your mouth.
Actually, can everybody hear me like this?
Perfect.
Yeah, let's just do it up, Mike.
Yeah.
Lord knows my wife knows I talk loud enough and long enough.
It's because all of us can't hear.
I think it's this maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, but I'm the best salesman for Costco hearing aids. I love it. Anyway, so what you'll do is you'll come out, you'll take a few laps around the pattern with our instructor. We do a little ground school. If you get a chance to actually see the engine, fly with the engine, get used to the engine, get used to that energy management situation. Bill will actually pull the spoilers on the glider out so that it simulates the approach of the SubSonex. It's a little slower on the approach, but everything else is actually pretty similar. You may have a little trouble with the glider if you're not used to taking off and landing on a single wheel. That's something they don't gig you for if you don't do well, because you're not going to have to do that in the airplane. So you'll do that with Bill. You'll then get a temporary authorization that allows you to go out and fly your SubSonex for the purposes of proficiency and getting ready for a check ride. And then our examiner, Bob O'Haver, comes out, or you come to him, whatever, and puts a GoPro camera in and sends you up and have you do some really difficult maneuvers like go up to half of VR and shut down and show that you get stopped by the end of the runway. Well, half of VR in this aircraft ends up being about 40 miles an hour. So that little test takes from here to the other building. And it's one of those things, because that's in the jet training, that's something we have to do. And so it's an absolutely useless demonstration of the fact that you can go up to 40 miles an hour and bring the thing to a stop on an 8,000 foot runway. They actually did have some other things in there that I made them take out. They were having us do some circling maneuvers and things that in a big heavy jet, you start these at maybe 4,000 feet, do a circling approach. And but in this aircraft, or even in the glider, they were making us do this. You started at 300 feet, and I said, I'm not going to have my guys pointing away from the airport at 300 feet, and then trying to make a circling approach back in. It's stupid to do that. They also were making the glider guys land 1,500 feet down the runway, because that's what you do in jets. You don't land on the numbers, you land farther down the runway. Well, again, that's great on an 8,000 foot runway, but a lot of gliders operate off of very short grass strips or paved strips. But you've got a 2,500 foot runway, and we've trained our guys to land 1,500 feet from the end. Or if they're doing an off-field landing, I said, we're training them to do things that are dangerous. And so we finally, after fighting, they've taken some of that stuff out and allowed us to tailor the training just a little bit more toward the aircraft. But we still have a long ways to go in that regard. Anyway, so you'll go up and do just some simple maneuvers. You do some steep turns, you do a stall. They want to see a walk landing, because again, in a big jet, it's a big deal to do a go around. In the SubSonex, not a big deal at all. And then you come back in, do a couple of landings, and, well, they have to do a no-flaps landing. Again, none of that is even a factor in the aircraft, but that's what you have to do with big jets, so that's what we do. Anyway, but the whole program goes by a couple of days, and then after you've flown your plane for a little while, come back out and do a really quick check ride. Yeah.
What you just said brings up the question. If you haven't had your check ride, can you even take the airplane that's never been flown and fly?
Yeah.
The airplane has never been flown. Do you have to hire somebody to do the initial flight?
No, you get a temporary authorization that allows you to fly your aircraft,
Even though it's never been
flown. Yeah. Yeah.
Can you fly overhead pattern like we did in fighters?
Yeah, sure.
Get you out, false arm,
Yeah. They don't make you, we don't make you do that. And we actually are recommending that people do just a standard normal pattern and a somewhat longer than normal final, just so you have a lot of time to get the speed stabilized, the approach stabilized, and recognize if you need to do a go around, you recognize it a little earlier. But yeah, I mean, we can do anything.
But it's your speed break.
There's no speed break. Yeah.
Is engine spool up time a consideration when we go around for these?
The spool up time is a little bit of a consideration. It's 5 or 6 seconds from idle all the way to full power. But more of a consideration is the fact that a jet doesn't make energy the same way a prop does.
It's something like here.
Yeah, so it's really a matter of you need to get the energy situation back up, not necessarily the fact that you've done 100%, but then you have to actually let the aircraft accelerate a little bit. So, yeah, so some of these slides were just things that I had in the other. There's the one that John was talking about with the original single wheel. And then this is the difference between the original prototype and this one. And shots of the night show, which hopefully we'll see tonight. So I think this is just the beginning. I think in the next 10 to 15 years, we're going to see a lot of things come out, and we're going to see things that we never even dreamed of. And the FAA actually does recognize, this is actually a quote from an FAA document about what they're planning to do in the next 5 years. They recognize that a lot of their regulations were written in the 50s and 60s, just don't apply anymore. And I actually had about an hour-long conversation today on some of the things that we're trying to do, especially with the gliders, because it's such a clear delineation point. Hey, we fixed the glider, nobody argues with us. But as soon as we get our foot in the door, we're going to start expanding out into things like the SubSonex, get some of these rules changed and make it a little easier, because a lot of this stuff is completely unnecessary. This aircraft is not any harder to fly than anything else you've ever flown. In fact, probably easier than most of the things you've flown. Okay, so I may be crazy, but I'm not that crazy. Yeah, and here's some things that are actually out there right now. Okay, any other questions? Yeah.
This temporary LOA thing that allows you to fly it initially happens after you do the jet glider thing?
Yeah, after you go through our jet glider comparable aircraft training, you're issued a temporary letter of authorization that allows you to go out and prepare for your check ride.
And that's like 3 months or 6 months?
It's, I think it's actually only 30 days, and they can do a kind of over the phone 30-day extension. So it's probably up to 60 days. So you want to do that, pretty close to the end of your build when you're pretty sure you're going to be ready to fly the airplane.
And what field length requirement has this for 50 feet takeoff and 50 feet obstacle?
What are we quoting for that?
It's less than 3,000 feet.
Huh?
Less than 3,000. Less than 3,000 feet.
With the 50-foot obstacle?
Oh, I'm sorry?
With the 50-foot obstacle?
Yeah.
Yeah. I just did an air show in New Jersey, 3,500 foot long runway with 200-foot trees at the end and a hill. And I took off that direction. About halfway up the hill, I was wishing I'd taken off the other direction. I was climbing fine, but I was just sort of running out of options. If something happened, I wasn't,
But 35?
3,500 feet long, yeah. And I mean, it wouldn't have been a problem had it not had a pretty good sized hill at the end. And I thought, well, surely I'll be able to turn, and no, it turns out there's hills all the way around, so. But it wasn't uncomfortable, not terribly uncomfortable. I did the next day step out the other direction.
Does have a really good,
Yeah.
two places in the works.
John?
What?
Two places, is that in the works?
What's in the works are all the airplanes being built here.
So you should get, if you buy two, you get a discount if you buy
Sure.
one supply.
Yeah, maybe we can do something like that, yeah. That's what it looks
Yeah,
like. I point out that the LOA thing is that it's really dependent on your experience. I'm a private pilot. I have a seaplane rating, glider rating, and now a jet LOA. But it was really interesting because we didn't have the program developed yet for that Bob's doing. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't talk very loud. So for me, it was really interesting because like the FAA said, well, Johnny, you got to have some turbine experience. Well, what does that mean? Well, you got to get some turbine experience. So I arranged with a construction company here that had a little citation. I knew the pilot, and she allowed me to go along on a ride out to Nebraska and back, where I sat with my hands folded. But I observed how the turbine works. It's amazing. I observed that most of the time, having a cocktail on the back Southwest airline. And the sensations of flying the SubSonex really it feels very much like flying an airline. You know, all the noise is going out the back. You have the initial acceleration on takeoff is pretty fun. It's also like driving a go-kart because your ass is on the ground and you're going 70 or 80 or 90 miles an hour at rotation. So that's the most interesting part of the flight, and the rest of it's pretty straightforward.
Would they count turbine helicopter time as turbine time?
I don't know. Again, it just depends on.
They've since changed, well, all of this stuff is slightly in flux, although we're beginning to nail it down, at least as far as the training part. If you've got some sport aircraft time, something light that you don't need both hands to flare, and you come out and go through our program, they consider that those two together comparable aircraft time. The only people that have had any trouble in our program is, somebody that you spent the last 2 years building an aircraft, you haven't actually flown anything for a while, and maybe haven't had any time in something that's light on the controls. And so we recommend that if you've got a friend with an RV6 or come out here and fly one of the piston Sonex or something, just something that's light in controls, maybe a glider, helicopter, whatever. And just be current when you come out. At least have flown a few hours in the last month or so that we aren't just getting you current the first few flights. That's just the only things we've seen is that builders tend to be building and then they go, oh, I got to go do this thing, and they went out there and they haven't flown anything in 2 years.
This glider thing takes place where?
In Albuquerque.
Maybe a good time to introduce Paul and have him talk about his transition experience.
Sure. Okay. Oh, there you go. Paul Dye?
Yeah, so a few years ago I got to know John and Mark and the folks here, and came up to I was new editor of Kit Planes Magazine, which was kind of an interesting gig because I didn't know anything about the magazine business at all. I flew spaceships for a living. Before that with NASA, I was flight director for the space shuttle. And so I had a lot of high-tech time. But I came up here and I flew all these yellow airplanes, and it was a lot of fun, and there was this little jet there, and they said, well, maybe someday. So finally I got the call and said, we'd like you to, I guess I was the first non-factory guy to fly it. And went out to Bob's place, and we got in a bonus jet and flew that around a while. And I hadn't flown a sailplane for a few years, and I'd never flown a sailplane with that kind of performance. And we lifted off, and it was just a great machine. It was a lot of fun to fly. flew around Billy for a couple hours, and then took a check ride. And bingo, I had a, what is it? I don't even remember what it's called, TST 14 rating on the type rating on my license.
Yeah, you actually get a new
You get a new plastic card, yeah, it gives you type.
And by the way, it counts as a BFR.
Yes, that's right. So I think that was like a Thursday, and they said, well, we got to get to the FSDO and get your letter of authorization. Might take a little while, but so I went home, and then I got the call that they had it, and actually I think I got back on Tuesday, and I got the LOA on at about like 8 o'clock in the morning. You guys got signed off, and then by 9 o'clock I was in the little jet getting ready to go and fly. Flew it for my first flight, and that's a kick because I fly a lot of different airplanes, and it's a tiny little machine, and it's so smooth, but you're always conscious of the fact that when you're testing somebody else's single-seater, that you really don't want to break it, you know. So it was a great first flight.
Especially if it's mine.
Especially if it's John's. John has weapons. And got back and debriefed with Bob, and then they said, okay, so the examiner's coming out at 2 to give you your check ride. I said, I better go up and practice again. So I went up and flew it around some more and came down. We had lunch. There's some great restaurants there in Moriarty. And came back, got in the airplane, and went up and did the check ride. So I basically went from an LOA to passing the check ride in about 6 hours. It's really not that hard to do. And my total impression of this airplane was how smooth it is. I mean, it's just really a kick.
Excuse me, did it fly that good with the examiner hanging
on the backside? I just, one quick roll and it's gone. It's not a problem.
We got to point out that they put GoPros in the airplane.
Right.
And the examiner looks at the GoPros. You're given a task.
And you got to perform it to his standards, and yeah, it was really good. So ever since then, I've been sitting there every once in a while. I go, boy, I really want to fly that jet again, And I come up here for business once in a while. I come over to visit SubSonex, and I say, John, is Sharky ready to fly?
I'm sorry.
It's out of annual. Where's the yellow? All right, come in. I do the yellow jet. Nice weather out here. John, can I take the yellow jet out? No, it's out of annual. They're always out of annual. And I finally realized that sooner or later, the only way I was going to get to fly one again was to buy one. So I'll just tell the short story, and then we'll get Pete talking. But so about a month ago, these guys went out and flew around the pylons at Pylon Racing School, and we're very excited about it. I live out near Reno, so I go to the races every day. I know the people, I know the organization, I know how it works. And Mark over there puts out this press release. SubSonex approved for racing at Reno. It's exciting. This is cool. Everybody come and see it. And I called up Mark and I said, Mark, I understand how the system works. I know it's approved for racing at Reno, but there's no class. There's no room in the schedule this year for class. You don't have class, right? And I said, if I put this press release out, people are going to go to Reno in September expecting to see these jets race. So I was just kind of chewing him out for this press release, and somehow after I hung up the phone, I said, I just bought a jet. And fortunately, I had been talking about it with my wife the night before, so she wasn't too shocked. She said, well, I knew you were gonna. So there is, if anybody ever watched, I live out there in ski country, and there are these films that have been made for many, many years by Warren Miller, and just great ski films. And he has this great saying that goes something like this: if you don't do it this year, you'll just be 1 year older when you do. And I finally decided why not. So that's kind of my story, but it's a great machine to fly. I've probably flown, I think I've got something north of 130 different airplanes in my logbook that I've flown as pilot in command. Tested a lot of airplanes, had a lot of experience with things from J3s up to Mach 25. This thing is just a fun all-around plane to have. I don't know that I'm ever going to sell my RV3, but I'm probably never going to get rid of this jet either. So that's my story. Any questions for me? Yeah.
So Paul, how would you compare it, and what would you expect relative on the two-seat RVs?
It handles much more like this, the RV3, the single-seater. People always used to say, well, what's an RV4 like? I say it's halfway between a 3 and an 8, and 8 is twice what a 3 is in terms of the feeling of the feeling of roll rate. When I get onto my RV8, I go fly the RV3, and I fly the RV3 for a week, and then I get back in the RV8, it feels like I'm driving an old beat-up pickup truck, despite the fact that the RV8 is a delightful airplane to fly. So this is not a twitchy airplane by any measure at all. I've flown, somebody asked if I could compare it to like a Casset of Formula One. I find the Casset a bit twitchy. This is not twitchy, it's just a really pleasant airplane to fly.
But the fact there's no empennage, prop wash, or anything like that significantly affect flight?
Not really. You know, it stalls at, what do we say, 60 miles an hour?
60 to 65.
60 to 65 miles an hour, but...
And what else?
Yeah, but you don't, you know, so you're roaring down the runway, you don't rotate it right then, because the jet's pushing the nose down a little bit, and so you gotta get enough airflow over the tail to rotate it. And like I always joke, on my first takeoff, I finally decided it was time to rotate when I could not stand the sound of those 8-inch tires going around that fast anymore. And then, as soon as you lift off, the first thing you hear is, and you go, oh my God, the engine just quit. Oh, that's the wheels spinning down. Of course, when I got back on the ground, I talked to Carl, and he says, oh, yeah, I got to tell you about that.
I'm a one design driver, so twitch doesn't bother me. But for Reno Air Racing use, can you compete in what class can you slide in right now? Can you even use it at this point?
That's a good segue. That's a segue for this guy, so I'm going to have Pete talk about it.
Okay, any questions? Well done. We'll be about another 4 hours. There is a quiz at the end. And so PJ initiated this whole process for us in this how to get another plane into air racing concept. And I do race in two classes, a sport class and a jet class. And I've won a boat, and that's the brag. And you know, the sport plane is like $400,000 that I'm going to race this year. You know, the jets, in the bigger jet class, you know, every race is $4 grand roughly, and it's a lot of money. And we started looking at this jet, and I was intrigued. And I said, PJ, figure something out for this. So he got a hold of Mark and John. They initiated this whole concept. I was like, so I'll come out and say hi. So we came out here, and then they said, oh, you gotta go meet Bob and get a check ride. Well, I have a tough schedule. Then I met my equal in tough schedules. I was like, Bob, you have a half a day on Tuesday and a full day on Friday, and we put it together. And I missed one question, my oral. He said, how many pounds of thrust does the engine have? And I said, 250. He goes, are you sure? I was like, 247. And he's like, okay, we can go fly now. You know, I was like, that was my big red hair. So we fly. Bob and I have a great time. Off we go. Come back out here. Okay, got here on a Saturday morning. Flew the little Sharky one, and then I drove home. And then we got to rookie school in June. So rookie school in June, I'm going to check airman there, evaluator, and instructor. And everybody's like, what is Pete pulling out of this trailer? And the FAA was all about it. You know, Bob deals a lot with FAA, John does as well, probably you too. Yeah. And they were like, well, you can only fly on the big course. Well, the big course is 8.5 miles long.
It's halfway to Susanville.
It's halfway to Susanville. And you know, we're doing that course at 500 miles an hour and it takes 54 seconds. And I was like, well, can't I fly it on the smaller course and keep in front of the crowd? And they're like, nope, can't do it. And only one plane can be out there. And we're going to have a safety officer at every pylon. And I'm like, really, guys? So we went through this, and the first flight around the course, they all had smiles, including the FAA. And that's when I knew this is good. In 15 years of racing, I've never had as much attention on a single aircraft as that jet. And it was astounding to the point that the rookie school class picture put the jet in the front. And it's usually something big and fancy like the P-51 or similar. And it spoke volumes. I mean, it was amazing. So we went out on the course, it all went well, and they said it's an approved aircraft. Okay, so we leave there, everything's great. Go home, I start doing some data points. I want to find out about the jet further for my own benefit. And then it was, we have to write the rules. So right now what we're doing, I'm the chair of the contest committee and the rules committee. So I'm writing rules for this new class. So it's approved the race. That's all good. Now I write the rules. Now in next rookie school, we bring 6 pilots, 6 jets hopefully, and we welcome volunteers to use their jets, by the way. And we go to rookie school, we develop that class on its own course. And we're going to use probably the Formula 1 course, which is kind of interesting.
That would be awesome.
It will be awesome.
Yeah.
So it's all happening, and they're all really enthusiastic about it. I can't imagine seeing the FAA smile. I've never seen that before. And maybe when they retire.
They really happy.
And that's where it's currently at, sort of. Meanwhile, I start getting calls from Portugal, China, 2 places in China, Brazil. Can you bring 6 jets in a box down here for their own race? And I'm like, sure. And we're developing that as we speak. These jets are going to go to other countries and to do kind of a world circuit, and it's happening. It's like right now happening. You had a question? No, you.
Bob, at the DA of about 5 or 8,000 feet, is it 47,000 so valid, or is it a derating at that point?
I mean, I was powered back intentionally, if I heard your question correctly, and we were doing like 250 on the course, powered back.
Okay.
And that was just to...
Still powered back, so.
Yeah, that was powered back. So, and with the, with Sharky, which is not a racified airplane, it's a stock airplane, and it was fine. It was great.
The thrust of the engine does drop off with altitude,
Yeah.
but the true airspeed picks up
Yeah,
at
the
a rate that's
less,
probably a little better than that. Yeah.
Is
Is there a time limit then on willpower?
Wow. I mean, it's racing, so,
Like, well, you can leave it up.
Yeah, we can leave it up, and, it's racing, so we're not there to practice conservative behavior. Yeah, exactly.
There are limits in the manual, and it's at 100% in 5 minutes. But we're flying back at 92% most of the time.
You're limited, above 98%, 5 minutes, above 92%, 30 minutes, and then 92 is continuous. 92%.
How sensitive is the throttle and is the fuel controller in the engine to rapid throttle speed?
It's all, you're not actually controlling anything, you're asking the computer to give you what it can. Yeah, so you can go like this with it. We don't recommend that because of the high thrust line, you'll get a little bit of a pitch down. If you did a fast go around like that 20 feet off the ground, it might actually bump the ground before you. You can do rapid excursions. I do it in the air show routine. I'm in and out of the throttle all the time. And the computer will only move the fuel controller at the rate that it knows is comfortable for the engine.
You can get a really good feel for that in our videos of all the different people flying and in a lot of the films or the GoPro images that Bob has taken in the air show arena. You can actually see them, running the engine, and you can hear the difference in the pitch. So
just one more question. So, are there plans at this point or work toward raising the TBO and getting a repair station in the United States? And I know that it's 350 hours, something like that. Now, I know that's a long time consuming, but still part of the cost of ownership. So.
Right now, I know PBS has in mind to try to raise the TBO, but they aren't promising that they're going to do that. It was 100 hours when I first started. They've raised it to 300. There were 2 representatives here at Oshkosh the first 2 days, and there is some talk about trying to get a service center in the U.S. But really, the engine, if you see there's a green igloo cooler back there. That's what I ship my engine back to the factory in. And that's what I carry it around. In fact, the engine for my Salto's in our other truck right now in one of those coolers. So it's not like a big piston engine, 400 pounds and giant wooden crate. This thing ships very easily.
So you have two engines?
Well, I have one for my Salto and then the one on the, and also the one on the bonus. If you go to our shop, there's half a dozen engines laying around all the time.
That's made practical, I don't know how long it takes to get back.
They've been pretty good. It sort of depends. I've had them get one back in a week if I needed it. But if you figure 3 to 4 weeks, you'd be pretty safe.
What was the real range of the aircraft? Because I see a lot of different information in magazines and in if you fly to 16,000 feet, what is the range with 30 minutes each hour?
The airplane burns about 17 gallons an hour at 92%. And so it's pretty interesting. I've done some flights. You went from.
I've flown at 300 miles. And landed with reserve plus some. I landed with 30-minute reserve plus I think an extra 3 gallons or 4 gallons above reserve.
That's with 40 or 42 gallons starting?
That was starting at, whatever.
40 gallons.
Yeah, 30, 40.
Yeah, it's a 42-gallon tank, but we have 2 gallons of foam. And foam is a ballistic foam. It's what go in all the military vehicles here. If you shoot a bullet into it, it won't explode, etc. And that's the baffle in the tank, because we've got this large volume of fuel that can be sloshing around, which is I didn't have in the first one, which is pretty interesting. But we learned that was really a good practice. So again at takeoff it's burning about 31 to 32 gallons an hour. So again, you're not using that for more than 5 minutes or so. And once you're in a cruise, so it's really dependent, and I'm not trying to be evasive, but it's really depending on the flight parameter, where you're going to fly. It's not an airplane that you take to 20,000 feet to cruise. We're going to go to 10, 11,000.
I'd say 12. 15, 16,
17, 999.
Yeah, anything above 15.
And of course, it has oxygen, or it can have oxygen.
The thing you don't want to do is get on the taxiway behind a Cessna 172 with an instructor and a student, and you'll sit there and burn up half your fuel while they jibber jabber. You like to get somewhere where you can get on the runway and get going, not burn a lot of gas on the ground.
And the helix tank, when you are inverted, how much time you have to?
I've flown inverted a little over 2 minutes, but I waited until I actually saw the fuel pressure dropping off to roll back over, and it took it about a minute to come up back up to full pressure. I think if I'd done full throttle. But I think inverted, I would limit it to probably 30 seconds, 45 seconds. But that's a decent time.
And the oil system?
The engine can go inverted. Yeah, it's got a full inverted system. That's just the aircraft tank. When you go inverted, you're running on the header tank.
How do you stay warm in the cold day?
Electric seats.
Electric seats.
Yeah. That's how we have electric seats in the airplane, so that keeps it pretty toasty. So we don't have bleed air or anything like that. So actually, a real problem is cooling down in the summer. It's the same thing with those airplanes over there. So, yes.
What's the range of speeds that he flew in the air show?
I enter a looping maneuver at around 200 miles an hour, maybe a little more. And I'll do, if I can get a good run on the high-speed pass, I'll call it 300 every day, but I may not be doing that quite. But I'll see a good 285, 290 on the high-speed pass. The show I did here Tuesday, I had lots of smash in every maneuver. I was I was seeing 240, 250 at the bottom, but I just didn't get a good position on the run in, so I wasn't going that fast on the high-speed pass, so I had to lie.
And the G's in the blue?
I shoot for about 4 Gs. Anything over 4, you're probably just wasting energy.
You know, we're talking knots, not miles an hour.
Now this one's in miles.
Will the motor run on diesel if you don't have any freezing considerations?
The factory has said that it probably would run on diesel, but they don't recommend it. I think partly because there's a lot more variation in what diesel can be than jet fuel, and of course they worry about freezing, yeah.
What speed was Pete running at Reno?
We were powered back, and I was running about 250 on the course time, on the lap times. And so we didn't have enough course time because Reno closed the runway this year, so everything was compressed. And I wanted to get another, and I was trying to get another, 4 or 5 laps on the last day and just open it up, and I just didn't get that. So, eager to see 275-ish, somewhere around there, I guess, but wasn't able to do it yet.
You don't know how much that was?
Yeah, I was running at I was running at 92%.
How many G's were you pulling around the pylons?
Not much. I mean, I didn't spill my coffee, so I mean, my highest corner, I was probably only 2 G's max. It's pretty low G.
9-mile course.
That's on the big. That's a big course.
Yeah, I was gonna say, that's the big
Short
course.
course, it's gonna be
Yeah, I mean, the big course under 400 miles an hour is really slow. It's just the truth, And anything below 400 on the big course is slow. And that's why there's very little G's. Now, I was trying stuff in the course just because I wanted to learn as much as I could while I was there. So I was doing some jinking and this and that, and it was just for experience.
Have you ever gotten in a position where you're in the downwash or wake or wingtip?
Yeah.
How does it handle?
Yeah, one year racing, we're required to wear Nomex and gloves, and I rolled inverted. I was at 80 feet roughly, and the stick forces were so high, I had taken off a layer of skin. No, not on SubSonex. No. I'm just speaking in general for you, but so yeah, I've been inverted on the course many times. That's why I don't fly it.
No, the question was how does this respond when subject to the weight?
The SubSonex.
Well, we did a bunch of formation flights with it for that purpose, not on the track. And so I was working with multiple planes where I would get into a wingtip or a prop wash and watch it roll in, right or left, depending if it was prop wash or wingtips. And it was no issue, just get out of the dirt, just like a kind of a helicopter maneuver, really. Get out of the dirty air, and it was right there and happy. I was very confident about that because I wanted to do that before I got on the course. Even though I wasn't with other planes, I wanted to learn that experience for racing. So
What size airplanes were the garbage generator?
I flew with a Mustang. I flew with a Pitts. I flew with a L39 and an L29. I think that was all of them. The Mustang was probably the worst. I showed him. I gave it back to him on his check ride the next day, but I got underneath the Mustang pretty tight, and it was pretty junky air, and it was really. And I expected the L39 to do that because the L39 dumps horrible air at high Gs. It's really messy at like 4G when it's spilling off the wing. But it wasn't bad, at least where I was in it. But the Mustang was the worst. And it was the prop wash that was the worst. Big paddles out there. Baloney cutters are big on the Mustang.
You got me excited there when I seen this low level here as a one at 100 foot and Mach. But with the wing loading, is it pretty stable at low altitude?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I don't know if you saw me fly Tuesday, but it's not uncommon for me to run down the runway there. 4 feet.
So you're not going to bust the canopy or whatever in there?
No, it's very stable. One misconception is that V-tails don't fly well. Bonanzas don't fly well. My Salto flies great, it flies great. The problem with the Bonanza is it doesn't have a 90-degree tail, it's got about a 105-degree tail. And it just doesn't have enough rudder. They need to be tipped up a little more. But no, this one doesn't have any of those. If you're on a really rough day, you once in a while feel just a little a little jitter like that when you go through a rough thermal or something, but no, it's very stable, very, well, we flew a 3-ship formation with the camera ship yesterday, and there were times, you know, you could let go of the stick and fiddle with stuff and not worry about it. Once you got it in a position.
And now we know what happened. Yeah. You were sending a text message or something.
What did you do with sipping his coffee?
We got a contract I can sign.
3 airplanes.
I'm ready.
What's the wing load?
There you go, John. Good. Mark, get over there and get a signature.
You want to see me at the end of the thing?
All the specs are on our information. I'm gonna be 75 years old tomorrow and I can't remember shit about all that stuff.
I mean, the biggest takeaway for me with this jet is, you know, I've flown a lot of jets. I have 20,000 hours in jets, and a lot of those are tactical aircraft, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And everybody comes out of this plane with a smile. I mean, it's just a blast, you know, and part of that is your pocketbook. You know, you don't, like, I don't think I stressed it enough. You know, racing is really expensive. This is awesome. You're out there just smiling. And I'm like, yeah, put in the expensive jet fuel. I mean, you know, this is great. You know,
I typically burn 5 to 6 gallons doing the show, doing the routine.
Yeah, Reno, I put in 2 full tanks of gas. Well, no, that's a lie. I filled it up twice, and each time it was at 20, so I burned 40 gallons that entire time I was there. That's it. I burn more fuel in other planes.
Well, the smoke oil is the same as the Houston smoke oil?
Yeah. Yeah, he's at his hand up.
I watch that video all the time, and that's what wakes me up. The video of you doing a little level over the desert. So I'm surprised you can actually do a hammer. I never thought that a jet like that could hammer. It just hammers just like a piston.
It doesn't hammer like a piston because you don't have the prop blast over the tail. It hammers like a glider. So you do have to cheat the hammer a bit and carve it over. You can't actually stop and do the rotate because you got nothing to rotate with.
And real quick, one thing I've been watching closely is it you or is it the plane? Occasionally I see wiggles, like a Dutch roll wiggle when you zoom in on it. Is that you just playing with it? Or?
That video was Arizona desert in July.
Okay.
At a soaring facility because that's where the thermals were.
Okay.
And so it was a pretty rough day.
So it's not the plane.
Yeah, it was going through some pretty hard turbulence. And yeah, so you'll see that little wiggle because it's any airplane would wiggle like that on that day.
To answer the question about wing loading, the airplane has 60 square feet of wing area, and so 1,000 pounds is max gross. So the most you're ever going to be is 16.6 pounds per square feet. Now, of course, that's going down, getting lighter and lighter as you burn in fuel. So when you're doing aerobatics, you've got how many half tanks. So you're at maybe 11 pounds per square foot, maybe 12, something like that. In a race configuration, maybe you do the same thing, kind of lower fuel load, I would imagine.
Yeah, it's less wing loading than my one design would be.
The other thing is it's a NACA relatively high camber airfoil. And I'll speak for John here because I heard him say this. Somebody says, oh, well, if you used such and such airfoil, it would be faster. And he goes, yeah, but at low speed, if the stall characteristics aren't good, you kill your first 3 customers, and that's not a good way to run this one. But the low speed handling characteristics are great. It does tend to, at about 85 miles an hour, it does tend to settle just a little bit, but just a little bit of power fixes that. And I have spun it, but you've got to really beg it to spin. It'll stall, it'll drop the wing a little bit, maybe one way or the other. But it doesn't really want to spin.
That's a characteristic of all these airplanes because of the Hershey bar wing and the way that it's set up. It's very, very, very hard to spin it and snap it. Because you got to really accelerate.
Spin it over your
head, it snaps in any of the SubSonexes.
Yeah, it'll sit there and walk like this and shudder and rumble and tap you on the head. And, you know, it really gives you all kinds of warning. And you've got to really, really, really keep working at it.
And if you do get in, then recovery is traditional.
Recovery is very normal. I did the, opposite rudder stick It's, the controls are very well harmonized. I'm a glider guy, I tend to over-rudder everything a little bit, but...
Even when you load it up at speed, it doesn't rudder everything?
No, it won't. One thing that we're most used to with any of our wide-tail airplanes is that most of the time in normal flight situations, you're just holding your feet steady. We have differential ailerons, and that gets rid of the perverse yaw that you might see in other situations. So that's what guys find that maneuvering. You don't really are not heavy into the rudder unless you're doing their heavy aerobatics.
The landing gear used there to down and up, or only to up or down the landing gear?
I'm sorry.
Pneumatic.
Yeah.
The pneumatic is for the both?
Both directions.
Yes.
Retract.
Yeah, it's a pneumatic cylinders, and it has a collector tank for that. So the loudest thing on the airplane, other than the engine, is the pump in the airplane. It's in it. So.
I mean, it flies like a jet. It doesn't. You don't need a lot of rudder. It's smooth. There's no vibration, or very, 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 very little, and it feels exactly like a jet should feel when you're flying.
The first thing you'll notice when you take off is that you're way out front. So there's not much airplane around you, and it's pretty narrow. And the first thing you notice when you take off, you look around and go, where is the damn airplane? And then you look back and there's this little tiny wing back there. It's pretty cool. Being a fighter guy, I'm used to being in the front, but I'm not used to having that small a wing.
Yeah, when you bank, if you don't turn your head to look, you go, where did the wing go? And, we've had that experience on a lot of little airplanes that we've had. So we're used to it.
I have a question for Bob that relates to a question that was posed to Pete about, Bob, when you start your show, you can see, I'm kind of queued it up here, we played it a few times, and you do your tight turns to wind up the speed. That may be, and I don't know if that's within the area that maybe the Formula One course, or getting close, what kind of G's are you usually seeing as you're winding up those turns?
I'm pulling about 3 G's in that turn.
Okay.
And I'll usually start that at around 100 miles an hour. And while I'm pulling 3 G's, doing a horizontal figure 8, I come out of it and something over 200 miles an hour and go straight into a half Q. So I can accelerate through a 3G turn.
Wow. So you don't piss away energy at 2 or 3 Gs?
No. The thing you want to do with the jet is always try to get it faster. And the G's don't hurt it that bad, but you definitely don't want to start climbing too soon. You want to level off, let it get a little speed, and then climb.
Is there any work on uplocks?
Yeah, we have uplocks in both of the prototypes, and we will have shortly the uplock system available for the standard jet. It's a very neat little mechanism. It works on the extra amount that the air cylinder can move, so it is moving a link as it's pulling up, and as the cylinder goes further, when the gear is fully up, it puts the lock into battery. And the same thing, it takes it out on the way down.
So it's activated all with the same?
All with the same actuator. In the prototypes, we had where the down locks on the gear take advantage of the whole throw of the cylinder. So in the production airplanes, they take just over 5 inches instead of 6 inches of throw. So that requires a little different link, and we've got to test that before we go in production. We know it's going to work now based on what we've done in the prototype. So it's a very, very neat, very simple, lightweight addition to the uplocks.
The uplock is a new feature. We didn't have that, and we found when I was pulling at around 3 Gs or 3.5 Gs, the gear would pop out of the wells just a little bit. I could feel it in the cockpit. We had a camera down there. It wasn't a big deal. It didn't hurt anything. It didn't have any little cracks. Really good feature.
maybe why you felt like you had so much more smash the other day.
We talked about that, and it could be that the F-locks, you know, every time I pull a maneuver before, I lose a little bit to the gear coming out of the wells. I think it's just if I start the first maneuver with a lot of smash, I end the routine with a lot of smash. If I start the first maneuver right at the low end, it seems like I never get it back. Unless I'll take a little break and go out and make one turn out, get a little more energy back in. But yeah, just some days you start with a little more smash and it stays there.
Now, sometimes the thing that's really interesting about the air show that Bob does is that it's relatively tight. If we look at some of the other jets out there, like the BD5 derivatives, you'll notice that they're going way out. Almost out of sight to come back in and do a maneuver, and then they're way out again. And Bob keeps it tight because he does have the energy and he has the wing area to be able to do it. And that's really important.
How much amps does the air pump draw?
It draws about, I think it draws about 3 amps when it's running. Not much.
I don't want to get too mired in comparisons with competitor airplanes, BD5, but Paul has an interesting perspective when he was invited to fly BD5 to evaluate it for the magazine, and I think it's really some good points, Paul, if you wouldn't mind.
Well, I don't want to, every airplane has its pluses and minuses, and I have not flown the BD5J, which is now being sold by guys called the FLS Micro, and they're nice guys trying to do a good job. We were working towards me flying it, and just circumstances didn't pan out because I didn't have a jet. But this airplane stalls at a pretty reasonable speed, around 60, 65. And like I say, if you do have a problem, if the engine quits and you need to find a place to put it, you look for a cornfield, leave the gear up and put it in and fly it all the way through until it stops. You'll probably get up and walk away. In the BD5J, the stall is much higher. It's in the 72 to 75 knot range. And you pretty much are going to get hurt if you put it down at that speed because you're powerless. One of the pilots told me is essentially if you don't have an absolutely assured landing, the engine quits, you bail out, you jettison the airplane in the BD5J. This one, I can't think of any reason you'd have a problem.
And we know that gear up landings are a non-event.
It's demonstrated.
But it's a flat bottom airplane. We're not worried about, it's not going to roll off onto a wingtip and cause an issue. And it was really a non-event to repair the airplane.
One of the things, the FAA is so wrapped around the axle about training about the jet, all about the engine. And the thing we realized is most of our people that are coming in for this, or even for some of the glider program, haven't flown a retract airplane much. And so after 3 gear up landings, we put an artificial gear switch in the glider. So you actually have to work the gear even though it's a fixed gear aircraft. And it's just one of those things you learn in training. You can get so focused on something you think is going to be a problem. That wasn't a problem at all, and then you find out you're lacking something else that really needed to be addressed and had to be.
And maybe you want to talk about the warning light system, flap interlock.
We learn a lot from things like a gear up landing. I did it. And that, of course, was part of the test program. But anyway, it's out here at the airport, fat, dumb, and happy with the flaps down, and come in and don't pay much attention and put it on the ground. I thought the nose wheel collapsed, but it wasn't. The gear wasn't down. And I probably made the shortest landing of anybody so far. But the remarkable thing is that it's just a small piece of skin on the bottom of the fuselage. Had to be replaced. We have nylon skids that are on the bottom of the airplane that are recommended in an emergency situation. Just leave the gear up. It was funny because the county guys came out and nobody knew what to do. I said, well, let's lift the thing up, and I put the gear down, got in it, and fired it up, and brought it back back home.
You don't have to prop when that happens.
That's right. You don't get the prop. It's a lot less expensive than in a lot of these other airplanes. So again, this was a real easy repair. But all in all, it was nice to know that that's the situation, and it's not a very dangerous thing. So.
The flap interlock, do you want to touch on
Yeah,
that?
now the flaps, of course, have, if you touch the flaps, you get a warning light. And the warning lights are crazy bright. They're LEDs that go right in my face, and they have a different flash pattern, and also a big flash comes up on the screen, like on our MGLs, that, hey, put the gear down.
Some of the videos you can see on the yellow jet, if the flap panel wasn't all the way into the D10, usually after landing and being in the trailer and out again, the first takeoff, the flap panel will be just out of the D10. And when I raise the gear, you can see those lights come on. And some of the videos you'll see them, they're really bright. If you land gear up with those lights on,
you have to be an idiot. So, I think it was a little more on.
20 minutes before 5.
Yeah, we can still take Justin.
Just on with the uplocks and the air system, if you lose air pressure, will it still?
It may come out of battery, but the nose wheel is not going to come down if you lose air pressure. So that's why we recommend that if you just keep the gear up.
That's a question about the kit.
Yes. Mark is going to hear
It's $100,000 for the kit with the engine. Right? So that does not include avionics, and it does not include interior, and it does not include paint. Is that right?
So when we first started selling the airplane, we had a higher price, and it came with the engine and the interior and all that stuff. And it was $130,000. And what we found is that we got our first 7 jet customers under that program, but we found that the feedback we were getting is that a lot of builders just wanted to defray that cost over multiple purchases, and so we separated everything. So the quick build kit for amateur build is $42,000. To do the exhibition category, where we build the tail and the control surfaces for you, is a $5,000 upgrade from that. The engine has been, for the last couple of years, $56,000, and actually at the end of the month is going up to $59,000. So it is going up by $3,000. And then you add the ERS, upholstery, instruments, and so forth. So we figure well, not counting the engine price increase, we were saying about $180,000, $190,000 just would be your minimum to get the airplane flying with everything in its base model, including our upholstery, our instrument package, and that kind of stuff. We also made the BRS optional because some of the builders just didn't want it. They weren't maybe as concerned, they weren't going to be doing air shows, maybe some light aerobatics. They wanted to retain that area for the baggage. So that's the airplane, obviously, we've been flying it long enough, and I would call the BRS as required item at this point. But nice to have thing. It depends what you're doing with the airplane. But so that's kind of the cost structure. Of course, you can spend more money than that if you upgrade with leather or get, there aren't really very many upgrade options for the airplane. So I tend to think that, unless you're going to go a little bit out of the box and go with, maybe, try to do like a full IFR panel, I think you'd be working really hard to spend more than $140,000 or so. To get the airplane flying, and depending on what things like paint cost you, and that sort of thing.
Will there be any annual recertification like in other experimental jets required?
Any what?
Any annual recertification?
That only applies to multi-seat jets. In the experimental world, single-seat jets, you don't have to get a 6158 yearly checkout.
another advantage of only having one seat. Insurance is probably
We
another.
are making progress in getting that removed from the deck lighter. That was the hour I had in it with the FAA today. And as soon as that's done, I'm going to start pushing the envelope so that something like this with 2 seats in the future, we might be able to get that removed.
You know, of course, the best thing about a single-seat aircraft is the quality of the social experience. Big believer in single-seat.
Question?
How do you find out if your bottom fits in your seat?
If you're what?
How do you find out if you can fit in this thing with your carcass?
Yeah, we have, so we do have a cockpit trial mock-up over in the office hangar. We'd be happy to have people try it on.
Does it include wing position?
Does the cockpit include wing position? They're just,
The view of the wing from the cockpit.
yeah. Well, there's stubs, so you won't get.
You can see where the wing is here in your.
No, you wouldn't see that. But if you're serious, we can get you in. We can get you into the real airplane at some point here during the show if you really want to check that out. We'll have you try the mock-up on first to make sure that that feels good to you, and then if you want to progress from there, we can get folks into the gray jet, for instance. We're not going to do that with the air show airplane. We're not going to do that.
So,
Presentation.
Great show.
Yeah.
Are you thinking to develop a removable fuel tank for long range?
Yeah, we get that question a lot. You know, how can I get more fuel into this thing? You know, I can let John and others speak to it more. You know, the airplane is what it is.
One of the things that the designers always get is that everybody always wants to get bigger, heavier,
Faster.
go further, faster. That's not what it's designed for. This airplane is designed to go out and terrorize the neighborhood. It's designed to be a fun airplane. So we do have a removable tank for smoke that we have on the gray jet. Bob has a fuel seat, or I should say a smoke seat, and those each carry about 6 gallons, which doesn't buy you a whole lot of time.
There's really no good way to get more fuel into the airplane.
But you could have hard points, etc., to put extra fuel on. But you know, you're pushing the limit of the airplane.
So how long does it take you to get to this, say, 12,000?
Initial I should know these numbers, but it's been a long time since I did all the flight testing. But initial rate of climb is 2,000 feet a minute.
Yeah, I actually timed a bunch of your videos, and that's now in the specifications. We have like an average to 10,000 feet, I think, listed. Oh boy. Yeah, average to 10,000 feet is 1,465 feet per minute, averaging out all the videos, all your test videos. Initial rate of climb, about 2,000 feet at sea level. That's with full fuel. That's fully loaded on the airplane.
So if you want to go 180 or 200 miles, that's actually doable.
Oh yeah. Well, like I said, I flew 300 miles from Albuquerque to Colorado Springs. Actually more year.
And the amazing thing is he didn't get lost.
Well, yeah, so
You like the airport boundaries.
I trailer everywhere, so I actually don't do much cross-country flying, so it's a little, I get a little nervous when I'm going to go 300 miles, but I mean, I know my home state pretty well. But, you know, you get up around 15,000, 16,000, cruises very well.
Yeah, and some of the early estimations when we were still in the test program with the airplane, I think we did overestimate what the range would be. I think, you know, the poster out in the show field, I have to reprint it. It might have some of those numbers. But we have on the website the 300 miles is a very solid, comfortable, realistic number with VFR reserve.
Triple baggage, fast packs.
Which is probably 4 times as much as any competitor's jet.
4 times as much as what you practically need when you're going to a pancake breakfast with no baggage to speak of.
Yeah, that's how I describe it to people is, you know, find your home airport on a sectional, draw a 300-mile radius around it. Now put a dot at every breakfast and lunch spot that you can find. And on any given Saturday, you're the person showing up in the jet.
And as I'll take another quote from Paul, it's the perfect partner airplane or club airplane. Because you show up at the hangar and it's gone. You just pull out your lawn chair, you talk to the neighbors, and within about an hour or so, it's going to be back.
Or they're going to call and say, hey, I didn't know they didn't have jet fuel at
Bring me some cherry to get some jet fuel. All right, any other questions? I don't want to get, I know some folks that want to get back in a timely manner, but we are able to run multiple trips back and forth, so if people want to hang out and ask more questions, or place an order, feel free, anyone that wants to load up in 5 minutes and go back, I'll take you back. So any other questions though from the group in general? Jake. We'll get into that. Right. Well, that's it. Feel free, like I said, with these guys.